This is our league, and this is your league. Broadcasting from the 55-yard line in Japan to the shores of the Great White North and everywhere around the world on Gridiron America Radio and the Sports History Network.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to From the 55-Yard Line. And in this episode, if you listen to the last episode, you'll note that it was about 3 hours. It began with a discussion with Fran, Dave, and I to go around, as the title of the episode is called, The Wide World of Sports. So we did an hour there. And then afterwards, I did 2 hours with my buddy, Zach Keilman. And after Zach and I finished the show, Zach made the great recommendation that I perhaps separate this episode out. So this week at From the 55-Yard Line, you are getting not just one, but actually 2 episodes. Though if you listen all the way through the episode 40, you get the entire Zach Keilman conversation and you don't get me droning on like I am now. However, if you only listen to that hour with Dave, Fran, and myself and tuned out after that, I completely understand. But with that said, I wanted to have everybody have a chance to listen to this episode with Zach, where Zach and I go way, way back. We actually many years. It's amazing how time flies. But I first met Zach Keilman when he was doing the Gridiron Gallery pod. He was just starting out podcasting, and I was an avid, loyal listener. And boy, one thing, the great thing about social media is you reach out to somebody, they reach back, and next thing you know, friendships form and actually partnerships get made because with Gridiron Gallery, he was looking at the international game. And really, he was the only person covering international American gridiron football at the time. So obviously, for those who have listened to the podcast, know that I live in Japan and that I also co-host the Gridiron Japan podcast. Well, that podcast was the result of Zach and I having a conversation, and him and I, and along with John Gunning with Inside Sport Japan and the Japan Times, started the podcast. It started out with Zach and I, and Zach was the original host of the show. And then after the year was over, Zach came to me and he's like, "Listen, I don't know if I can do this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, no problem. What's going on?" He goes, "I got an opportunity with the USFL." And I'm like, "Dude, take it." So Zach stepped away from Gridiron Japan after season 1 and is now hosting. Well, it was originally the USFL podcast. It's now the UFL podcast. And there's a link in the description of the show to that podcast where he co-hosts with the ref over at Pro Football Newsroom. And both guys are good friends. Their podcast is great. They've been doing it. I mean, they are both of these guys. And actually everybody at Pro Football Newsroom, because it's just not Zach and the ref. It is Mike Lathrop with Player 54 podcast, James Larson, and many others. To me, and this is my opinion, they are the best guys in the business. Now, other people may have differences and different opinions with Pro Football Newsroom. Not me, because the ref is the one who founded that Pro Football Newsroom. And, dude, if you're out there listening to this podcast, you've always been gracious and very kind to me. And so I say thank you because you inspired me to kind of do what I'm doing now here in retirement here in Japan as as we do this podcast here on the Sports History Network. Though I'm going to be honest with you, I salute anybody who is going into doing news for alternative football and minor leagues that don't get the press coverage because we live in a day and age now where newspapers are disappearing, where our viable news sources are fading away. But we have the internet, and the internet is both a great tool, but also a bad tool too, depending upon who's using it. But when it comes to sports, it is a wonderful tool. And Pro Football Newsroom, the work Zach's done, the work that the ref has done, everybody at our Sports Central, Fran, what he does, everybody at the Sports History Network is emblematic of why the internet is a great place to be, and why in this day and age, all of us can be, be actually, we can contribute to the conversation, be it as bloggers, working as trying to be real journalists and asking the hard questions and, getting your voice out there. Now, at one time, I remember when blogs started up and everything, they were kind of dismissed. But, to me, they're becoming the one place, at least in the sports realm, where we as fans can go and get our news. And, our Sports Central is a news site. Pro Football Newsroom is a website. You've got other news sites out there, but they all have their roots in when back during the early days of the internet, when everybody was creating a website and getting their voice out there. And so for everybody listening, hey, thank you for all you do. And for those who did not listen to my conversation with Zach, because I'm going to be honest with you, a 3-hour podcast is a lot to ask of somebody. Well, I'm doing you all a favor, and I'm just giving you the Zach Keilman conversation here for episode 41. Great conversation. Him and I are good friends. Like I said, he's one of those guys where when I see a news article about spring football, and it's no longer, back when it was XFL and USFL, would always ask him a question going, is this really right? And he would always never shy away from his opinion offline. And, it was one of those guys that I can text over here in Japan and, within minutes get an answer from him because he's so easily accessible. But as I was saying, Zach's work with the UFL podcast, I don't have enough nice things to say about Zach. So with all that said, Zach and I sit down in this episode. We talk the UFL. We also talk Arena Football League, which Zach is also, and that's the other thing too. Zach's so involved. He also does an indoor football, Arena Football League podcast, Inside the Walls podcast. So with all that said, without further ado, this is my conversation with Zach Keilman. I hope you all enjoy, and we will be talking to you more next week. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to From the 55-Yard Line. If you've hung around for part 2 of the podcast, you will know, and you listen to part 1, you know that I am now, it's a day or later, and I'm now sitting down with my buddy, Zach Keilman from the UFL podcast, and also the former host, and him and I both originated the Gridiron Japan podcast. Mm-hmm. And how I first got to know Zach was when he did his Gridiron Gallery podcast, and we've been, God, that was during the pandemic, right, man?
Yeah. Yeah, for pretty much. I mean, that's when you and I really got to meet up, was about that time. And yeah, I mean, Gridiron Japan kind of came as a product of us meeting and getting through post-pandemic, essentially.
Yeah. And it was just one of those things that we just like, hey, that'd be kind of cool to do. Nobody's doing it. Next thing, and here we are into year 3. We had you guys on. We had you on. God, I forget how many episodes ago. So I know when John was listening, he goes, it's good to hear Zach again. It was really good to hear him again.
It was great to be back on, by the way. Just, it's nice. I still try and do my best to keep tabs with the league through you guys and anyone covering on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. So, I mean, it's a great league still. I'm glad the show's going stronger than ever, by the way. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully for next season, we'll, for me, it was a personal challenge during the last 2 seasons, because I had a move from the U.S. to Japan for last season. Then I had a move from my rental place to my condo during the middle of this season. So going into next season, I think we'll be in better position to do hopefully more. We've got a website up now. And hopefully I'll be kicking out articles with the new season coming up, because that was the one thing I wanted to do.
Very nice.
Was to do some sports writing. But, with everything going on in my life, and also, too, there was one other thing that factored into me not kicking out any writing, and it's carpal tunnel syndrome.
Oh, I didn't know you're dealing with that.
I dealt with that towards the end of my career as a probation officer. In the
Hmm.
last 2 years, it was painful, and I I, I really I had to basically I had to suck it up and power through it because I had to type my report. Nobody else was going to type my reports up. So after I retired, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to stay away from the computer as much as possible because it's roofers get it. I had an
Yeah.
ex-girlfriend. Her father was a roofer, had it really bad. And so I knew about it, but then there was that moment at work all of a sudden, why do my wrists hurt?
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. And so you power
Yeesh.
through it and everything. So, but it's been almost well over a year since I retired. It's gone away. So hopefully by summer and everything, I'll be limber enough to start kicking out. I mean, I've got a laptop. I'm retired. I got plenty of time. So, but anyway, enough about me. How are things going with the UFL podcast?
I think things are going just great. It's a hectic time right now for the at least the show and Pro Football Newsroom in particular, where we
Right.
host the show. Just it's a lot of keeping up, a lot of day to day analysis, and I guess documenting of what's going on to the best of
Yeah.
our ability. Mostly got to give a lot of praise to our guy James Larson because he's been, I mean, you talk about us like we're doing a lot right now there at PFM, but he's in like overdrive mode, making sure he's keeping up with any of the transactions, getting any insight on transactions or uh, letter of intents that are going through with players. But yeah, I mean, we're doing great. We actually just started a second show that we're going to do this season for the UFL side of things. We're calling it Around the UFL.
Okay.
So basically, one problem we had, and I think I mentioned this to you on the side. So we do the UFL podcast on Fridays during the season. Usually in the off season, we'll do it like once or twice a month when we get some news or things we want to talk about. And what we learned during the seasons the last 2 years is we don't have enough time to jump on like a Sunday or Monday night to do good recaps. We
Right.
do recaps in a Friday episode, and I mean the week's already gone by, Greg.
Right.
So like there, like for us, we're going, yeah, this feels like we're just doing it to like punch a bullet point we missed, and we have listeners that they're dedicated people, but they're like, hey, we would love if sometime you can do like a Monday recap show or something like that. So it's not like we're going through an hour and a half slog every Friday, getting to the stuff we really want to hear, like previews and news and
Right.
transactions. And sure enough, we've grown PFM. We have a massive slate now of content creators. And I've been with my buddy the ref, who has founded this thing back in 2018. He got me in 2020, and it is amazing how the site has grown
Yeah.
in just 4 years, in less than 4 years time.
Yeah.
I mean, we have easily 10 to, and I think it's between 10 to 15 content like creators or writers on our roster right now that we can
Right.
all use at our disposal, that are all excellent people in different things they do.
Yeah. And of
um
course, everybody
yeah,
worked, and that's the thing. It's a labor of love with you guys too.
right.
And it's, for lack of a better term, it's almost a second job for all you guys.
It kind of
Except,
is. It,
you
it kind of
know,
is. It's definitely the passion project job. You know,
right.
like I me. I have my own thing right now in Arizona that I moved down to do,
Yeah.
but this is the thing that you know, I get up for that specific position because it's a dream position for me. By the way, where I moved to, but I
Right.
also get up for that other part because I get to do football
Yeah.
content creation and now writing articles, especially this year. It's absolutely a second job. Not
Right.
on to me, not on paper, but mentally, it absolutely is, but in a good
Yeah.
way.
And you guys are on the leading edge too, because content creation by me, everybody who does a podcast, everybody does a video cast. That's what's driving things now. That's what
Yeah.
people watch. I mean, if you're not on YouTube, which we're not at Sports History now, I mean, we are on the Sports History Network, but it's just the audio portion of it. But if you're not on YouTube, then if people aren't watching on YouTube, they're not seeing you. I mean, podcasts are great for when you're on the go, which, obviously when we first started this, I mean, you had just started doing, I remember back in 2020, you just started doing the video, and just to see how things have like progressed with
Very much.
you guys, all the other guys covering the XFL, the USFL, and just to see all that. And as an older guy, I just kind of sit back and I go, you know what? I remember reading a book one time that predicted where we were going, and here we are.
Well,
so
yeah, talk about it nailing on the head. I mean, look, I think it's just also the interest in the sport outside the NFL has grown too. Not everyone talks about it, but funny enough, the Alliance of American Football's 5th year anniversary is coming up next month, at least the start date.
Yeah, wow, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, think about that. And I do, the more you look into it and you kind of see how hindsight is 2020, and you see how that was kind of like the martyr that really kicked things off. I know that some will say that XFL 2020 is like the one that really like catapults it, but like the AAF was like really well respected and got people hyped up for the XFL the next year in its own category. And it kind of kicked off this current, I think I call it the golden era of football right now that we're in, like 2019.
Yeah, I agree.
Not just the NFL with its top ratings and everyone even more so invested in it than ever, possibly going to maybe even put a team someday in the UK. But like, we're just talking options here, like people like recognizing, oh my gosh, look at all these places I can go see football if I'm beyond just the NFL, because the more you get hardcore fans and the more fans getting attached to it, they want more of it. And I think we're seeing that, at least they're interested in it, and here we are once again. The UFL, it feels like, is now 5 years later. It has that kind of hype around it, like the AAF and the XFL 2020 did back at the time. Like, I think I've seen more casual fans talk about it like that.
Okay.
And, we're 5 years in, and the AAF, I mean, indirectly, as it died, kind of helps kick off what we're all doing around. The Arena Football League's back again. And it died in November of that same year, funny enough.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right.
Everyone forgets that that around Thanksgiving is when the AFL had pulled everyone out of the offices in their 6 cities, and then they tried to see if they could do a traveling tour style of system, and then they had to axe it because of pressure from bankruptcy issues and debt.
Okay. Now, and we're going to talk about the AFL in a little bit here. But with spring football, so when you're talking, that's the thing. Nobody really talks too much about the AAF when we're talking spring ball. And of course, you and I are in those. And I think we're at a point now where, thank God, I'm going to be honest with you. I am glad. I'm hopefully the XFL versus UFL fan base, that battle is over and done with, because it was wearing me out. It was wearing anybody who was on social media. It was back and forth. And, bottom line is we all want spring football. We all want football. We all want spring football to succeed. And just to see, I kind of equated it to, and there was a point there where there was a Jerry Seinfeld line that made me.
This will be good. I'm up for Seinfeld anything. So.
There was a Jerry Seinfeld line that was in my head as I'm watching these arguments. And the quote is, hey, we're rooting for laundry. We're rooting for the logo. Because if somebody asked me who's sewing, I mean, the players with the players in both leagues were not household names. The only people that really knew these names were the hardcore fans like you and I. But ultimately, when the league started up, it's like, okay, guys, you're just rooting for a logo at this point. But now here we are into the first season with the UFL, but really, would this be season, if we're with the USFL season?
I say if you're starting with the USFL, this would be year 3.
Mm-hmm. And then XFL, you got year 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got some names, you've got some recognition, and at least with the XFL, they kept the markets that were the strongest. Now, I don't really know much about how that decision came down with the USFL markets. And so, do you have any insight as to how this all came about, where really, we had 5 XFL teams and only 3 USFL teams?
Well, I will say that there's a caveat to that, because I know you'll see there's a little overlap. So on it, so you like look at the XFL one, I think is pretty self-explanatory. Honestly, the four markets that aren't named Houston were all the highest selling ticket markets and most interest. So like that one right out of the gate, you go, oh yes, absolutely. And also you look at the merger, and I think just based on the fact both of them are talking what best work for each one, I'll be honest with you, if they were since they went to the XFL hub system, which for those that maybe listen to your show and don't know what that is they go and they live in Arlington, Texas. This is what's going to happen this year. They're all going to have the players and coaches personnel. They're all going to live in Texas, and they're going to practice in Texas. They're going to get ready for the weeks in Texas, and then they're going to fly out or drive out to their home stadiums for every week is the plan. They want the engagement of the in-stadium experience with the benefits of having workers' comp and travel benefits from Dallas being an airport hub and Texas being light on workers' comp, from what I understand.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, that and taxes, at least taxes. The workers' comp thing, don't totally quote me on that, but just based on my arena football knowledge, I would have to guess the workers' comp ain't too bad in Texas, just being clear. And if we're talking AAF, remember, the Orlando Apollos had to practice in Georgia because of workers' comp issues. I
forgot about that. I remember that. Yeah.
If you want to talk about three keys to running a football program or football program, ever since I've gotten in and started really digging into this stuff, workers' comp, taxes, and travel are always going to be the bane of your existence doing football. So they wanted to do a travel hub, and they also apparently the XFL owns in some sort of way owns a chunk of Choctaw Stadium to where they can run the operations out of Choctaw Stadium, whereas the USFL was renting their properties. So basically they kept the four best markets, and if you want to count the Houston one, the five best markets in that way from the XFL side that were not travel crazy and were in a centralized area.
That gets me to my one question, and nobody that I know of that I've seen on social media has answered this question for me. Okay, so they kept, and I was a Roughnecks fan, so I'm happy with the Roughnecks stand. But here's my question. You also had the Houston Gamblers. Couldn't they have just taken the logo off one helmet and slapped it on and just call them the Gamblers and keep them even though they're to me, that was the one thing about this whole thing that did not make sense. I know you had fan base, but team, again, I'm confused. So what's your take on that one?
I understand. Honestly, if you want me to be as crystal as I can be, I think that the pressure from just having the Roughnecks be in the city and being the recency bias team, since they had two really good rosters over the past 4 years, between 2023's iteration that won their conference, or that at least one was top dog in their conference up until they lost their conference championship game, and then the 5-0 roster that everyone knows PJ Walker from, that him getting his way to the NFL and really putting spring players on the map again. I think that's why, the Gamblers do, look, I talk, and I think you kind of know this. The ref is based out of Houston. He lives in Texas.
Yeah.
And so he has a really good thumb on like that. There are Gamblers fans that are still down in Houston when he's talked to them. But I think the Roughnecks being an XFL brand and it being more recent and more in the
carried
public
more
eye
cachet.
Recently. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the deal. It just has a little more cachet. Plus, I mean, you look on Facebook like I do. I mean, you got people signing petitions to keep the brand around. I mean, it was probably the best decision they made, was to just appease to that group of fans and grow that brand anyway. Now the kicker is, and here's where this ties in, is to also why, the USFL doesn't, on paper doesn't have four.
Right.
The kicker is it has the head coach and the roster of the Gamblers there. So
the
Roughnecks exist, but it is not Wade Phillips's Roughnecks. It is Curtis Johnson's Roughnecks. And Wade Phillips they retained because, they let go Hines Ward in San Antonio, and so basically him and his staff now retain San Antonio's roster.
And I think that got lost in the noise.
Yeah, it was very confusing how they did it, but it was to as they said, 50-50 split. They really wanted to make sure it was 50-50 on the personnel front.
Okay.
In that regard. Like, yes, the brands aren't 50-50 split. I love the Gamblers brand, and it's a shame that it might not come back.
Right.
Even in any scenario where this league exists again, it would have to be like a completely new city.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, too,
personnel's there. So they did
Yeah.
they did the best they could for trying to do merge/cost saving to go to 8.
And looking at, just looking back with history when it comes to merging leagues and everything, back in 1970 when the NFL and the AFL merged, they grabbed 3 teams from the NFL and brought them over to the to put them in the AFC. Though it is curious with that, because you had the Colts and you had the Browns, which were originally AAF's, All-American Football Conference teams.
Mm-hmm.
Now you had Pittsburgh going over there, which was a very, back then, a very interesting choice. And, Pittsburgh went because Cleveland, they wanted to keep, it was the Rooney, without the Rooney, it's the Rooney. So they're like, yeah, we're going to go over. But back then, Pittsburgh did not have a winning tradition.
Right.
It would have made sense for the 49ers actually to go to the All-American, go into the AFC just based upon the age of the franchises from the original NFL. So seeing this come about with the UFL and how they did it, yeah, okay, it makes sense. And you've explained it to me. Okay, now I get it more than I did when I, really hit the record button here, because I really wasn't clear on that in terms of just kind of all that decision making and how it went down. And
I didn't. I mean, even and this is like the one correction I've made a video on our own social channels, is I said it wrong on the episode and I had to correct myself because I was like, that's not like, I originally said that it was, they took Wade Phillips's team to San Antonio, like the roster and the coaching staff, and kicked the Brahmas entire roster and coaching staff out. Like it shows you just how, like, it seems so backwards in my head. And the only thing I could equate it to, and you'll love this reference, is the 1984 trade between the rosters of the Wranglers in Arizona and the Chicago Blitz. And that's even more extreme, but like, that's the closest thing I can think of as to how this makes any sense. As you went, well, that's not the original Roughnecks roster, but it says it's the Roughnecks.
Right.
It says that's the Roughnecks. And the Brahmas are like, well, it's still the Brahmas. It's just the difference is we didn't lose the Brahmas roster. It's only the coaching staff that switched around that time, but you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's just close enough to where I can equate that instantly in my head that way.
Well, and, too, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, I mean, I started rooting for the Roughnecks because I love the original Houston. I mean, you can't see it here, but I got a Houston Oilers pennant up here in the man cave. And, so they came out, the helmets were great. Then the NFL went and sued them and everything. It's like, this is great. But, the one thing that I wish the Roughnecks would bring back from the Houston Oilers days is the "Love You Blue" slogan. Because the question is, well, you can hashtag anything. I mean, that's not really copyright.
I mean, you can. You can. Right. I think it's when you put it on a graphic and you start marketing with it.
I just wish, it'd be the old man in me who finally remembers watching Earl Campbell plow through the 78 Dolphins on Monday Night Football with that "Love You Blue." That was a special era in Houston. And to see the Roughnecks come back, and it's like, okay, they're the Oilers. A Roughneck is an Oiler. I mean, so they honored that, and then the helmet was great and everything. So yeah, I just wish they would bring back the Columbia, the color scheme, and the "Love You Blue" slogan. Though with the color scheme, anybody who's paid attention to college sports knows that the University of Houston apparently got sued or got a cease and desist on that one.
I wish badly that the Adams family in the NFL would just. They're using it now, thank God, because they removed the whole helmet shell rule that existed for several years, and it was originally a safety measure. And now ever since they reversed it, I'm like, thank God, you can actually honor the Oilers instead of saying, well, we sell some merch every once in a while and we impose lawsuits at random, because that's how I viewed it for years.
Yeah,
like when the Roughnecks did it, I'm like, that was like some people's thought. I was like, oh crap, are they going to get a lawsuit? And sure enough, they did.
Right.
And then they revamped the logo. I actually like the new logo better than the old one, with the H being more pronounced, but still is an oil rig.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look like that. My thing is I wish you could do the powder blues, but I know that they would instantly get sued, just like
Oh
this university, for
yeah.
doing that. But
Yeah.
it looks so good. And the city, the history behind that is so disorienting
Well,
for
and then
how the Oilers originally moved out of the city anyway.
right.
You
And then
know,
with the final kick in the teeth with Houston is when the Texans went to play the Titans, and the Titans put on their Houston Oiler outfits.
yeah, yeah, kind of wild.
It is, but
Kind of
anybody,
wild. I mean, thank
yeah,
God those things can still exist. Like I said, if they didn't change the shell rule, I mean, that would be like my first ever. That'd be one of my first ever petitions, is going, give up the rights to the Oilers like color scheme or something.
yeah. Well, do we know if we're kind of getting off topic, but do we
I
know
know.
if the color scheme is going to stick around at least on the college side?
So, wait, on the college side, you mean?
Yeah, with University of Houston, are
I
they
actually haven't
bringing?
looked up what's going on with that,
Okay,
but I think they have to. I think they basically did back down. Although what's
really,
funny is there was no lawsuit for Rice, because Rice did
really?
a yeah. If you look this up, Rice last year also did a powder blue color scheme and did a tribute to the Oilers, but they didn't get shot
Huh?
down
Okay.
by the Tennessee Titans or the NFL. They were left alone. I think it's because the Cougars were in the Big 12, where it's bigger money and more viewership,
Okay.
that the NFL went, okay, enough's enough, and they basically had to go and talk to that school. But
Yeah.
yeah, Rice was they did it too, but they didn't get
Hmm.
any flack for
I
it
I
publicly.
completely missed that news. But then again, over here in Japan, when it comes to college football, it's really hard for me to watch college football, especially with watching the prime time. Well, just watching pro football in the States over here in Japan as a challenge, because I've got to get up, to watch a Bears game. I got to get up at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, and I'm just that ain't happening with me. So I miss
Mhm.
out on a lot of the college stuff. But yeah, I didn't know about what Rice did.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop that in our. I know we're talking on Zoom. I should be able to drop it right in a little chat here.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna do that while we're talking,
yeah,
because I did just find it, and like I said, it's pretty good mock up. It's just that, like I said, it's because they're a smaller school. I think it's
right.
they're in the AAC, so not really a big need to go and smack down the AAC schools.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's
and
also
right,
slightly
yeah,
different. It's a little bit different up to where you can like get away with it, I guess. But still, like, you can tell it's Oilers uniforms
and
right off the bat.
yeah, it hasn't popped up yet. Yeah, I'll
Yeah, you'll see
what
it
what
right now. I'm posting it right now.
So with
Yeah.
that question, so since we're talking football fashion, so there's a rumor that I saw going out with the UFL, they're redesigning a lot of the uniforms.
That's the rumor going around. At least it's been implied by head coach Anthony Becht. He's gone on local radio and has said several things, including the fact that one of the bigger ones is that apparently the USFL kickoff seems to be favored right now as the front runner to be the retained kickoff rule set. And then they're still trying to diversify the rules, but like, yeah, the uniforms, it sounds like, are on the table for
Okay.
being at least touched up. I don't know how drastically, because I mean, both leagues took a complete different approach to uniforms. The XFL wanted to be like a lot of innovative in terms of like textures and like stylization with the helmets and all that. And the
Yeah.
unis were a specific pattern with like the little, I think, like certain croppings. And then, the USFL wanted to do it like as close to the OG uniforms as possible with like a modern flip to it for the most
Okay.
part. Sans the showboats, because I think the showboats, they just wanted to match more the Memphis like Grizzlies color scheme, like Brine
Oh,
City.
that okay, that explains it because I could never quite get my head around why the
Yeah.
showboats were all of a sudden. I mean, like, okay, wait a
Yeah,
minute,
it was
that's not.
more city branding. That was what they were trying to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when I saw them, like, I'm like, oh, that's not the showboats that I know, and I was like, okay, well, if the Showboats wanted me as a fan, they kind of I'm a football fashionista, so they lost me on that with the uniforms. But
I know
then
no
there were
red and silver and no red, silver
yeah,
and white, no
yeah,
Reggie White flashbacks with these.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, but yeah, yeah, because when it comes to football, I mean that people don't realize how important getting the uniform right is for a team. Because if you're going to attract the young fans, that's the first thing that they lock into is how cool are the uniforms. I know that's how it was for me back as a kid when I first saw the Dolphins uniform, and even to a certain extent the original, well, the St. Louis Football Cardinals uniform,
mhm.
which is why I'm still a huge fan because of that. For whatever reason, that as they used to call it, the chicken head on the helmet.
Chicken head.
It spoke to me. So, but yeah, getting the uniforms right, I would think, because that's going to be the next thing we have rolling out, right? I mean, we've got the schedule get rolled out yet?
No, schedule's not out either. That's actually probably going to be the next thing is the schedule.
Okay.
Which I we were at least us at PFN were thinking it was seeming like it was going to be out this month. There were a few times that it was like we were expecting it to be out on a certain week, and it just hasn't happened. But
Okay.
you look at like how the USFL's done it in years past with tickets, and even the XFL, as long as they get it out 2 months in advance, that's like the threshold. It seems it's not ideal,
All
but
right.
as long as they have like a roughly 2 months leeway to start selling the tickets properly that are
Yeah.
single game, like they're still doing season tickets and deposits. Actually,
Right.
they're doing season tickets for every venue except for Houston, which is possibly part of the equation, is that they have not finalized their venue yet. We're still waiting to see what the official Houston venue is. There's rumors.
Right.
There's
Well,
rumors that it might be Rice Stadium that have been flying around for
yeah, I
months
saw
now.
those rumors. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
'cause
but it's not finalized.
that gets into my next question here with the league, the combined league. Because my big issue last year was with the XFL was the leadership and the way some things came off with, first of all, and you and I had this discussion at one time, you know, it's great if The Rock is out there, but I don't need to see The Rock on my TV every other 5 minutes selling something.
Yes.
And Danny Garcia, I don't know how tight you guys are with the new leadership of the UFL, but to me, is she gonna be the head of this? Who's in charge? I guess. And
Okay.
that's really kind of where I'm go. Answer me that, and then I'll have follow-up questions on
No,
that.
it's fine.
So
So I guess a little recap of how this merger works. So again, it's supposed to be 50-50 of the ownership groups between the two. So Fox owned 100% of the USFL. So they're going to own, in theory, and again, this is just how they phrase these together. I don't know if this is actually the split, but that one half is all Fox Sports that owns it. So that's the USFL side. They were
right.
the only ones that invested in the USFL. So Fox Sports, as you know, is like one of the majority big wigs owning this.
Yeah.
The other side of this, the main people you need to know, Redbird Capital, that's where Jerry Cardinale comes from. They had the majority stake by far in the XFL. They owned like, I want to say 80%, but that is just a rough remembrance. I know it's not anywhere close to like a 60-40 between like The Rock and Danny and Redbird. Like Redbird owns and basically is the big hoss that was running the XFL operation and kind of swinging around. Danny and Dwayne both own chunks, but they're more
Okay.
PR faces. And Danny was more handling, I think, league operations side last year, where she would do behind the scenes like work, but she's an owner, but she's a minority owner. They're both like minority owners in the grand scheme of it. Really Redbird and Fox are the ones that are more throwing weight around, to say the least, but Dwayne Johnson and Danny do have a slice and are more the PR angle and help with executive items and decisions in the background is their deal.
Okay.
Now that might not be the same because you're right. One thing the XFL definitely did last year that also got to me and many others is it became the Rock League. And like, I understand Dwayne Johnson is a megastar. I understand he pulls quite the crowds, but the message I felt by mid-season got very lost, and you could tell in the television marketing for the league, ABC, ESPN, Disney. I know I'm going through entities, but like Disney themselves, who they partnered with for the TV, ESPN, ABC, networks, FX, the promos started altering to less of The Rock and Danny in the promos, more about the football. And some of that could come because they had footage, but the message really shifted to becoming less about The Rock's league and more about this is a quality football league. And you can see in the UFL marketing so far, since they officially announced this at late December, like The Rock's in there, like all the promos on Fox have his voice on it.
Yeah.
And he does say that whole line from week one.
And he does have a great
baby.
And he does have a great voice. We can't,
right.
he's got
right. No, he's a
voice.
great PR tool, but you can't overuse him. You still have to have the message of this is a quality football league. We're trying to promote football and innovative football. And so this time they're using him, but they're doing it the way they did by mid-year last year. He's in the promos, but you still think it's about football first. This doesn't come off as the Dwayne League, like Player 54. Player 54 was, to many, especially in our own community, was like basically a player's documentary that focused heavily on Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson for possibly little to no reason at times. Yeah. But it still did because they own the league and it's a rock vehicle at that time. Now it's definitely more about he's investing and he'll help in PR and executive decisions. But trust me, Redbird and Fox are calling the shots and are running this. They want this to be a sports property that takes off. I mean, Redbird thought that they could get this to be like a top 6, top 5 property challenging MLS with the XFL. So that's definitely the vision. They want to be a top 5 entity in this country.
And with that said, I'm curious as to how they figured that out. Because, I mean, you and I've said this many, many times, that hope is not a plan.
I know.
With the business model, I mean, have you seen in your talks with anybody who has said, hey, we've studied the market, we know this about the market? I mean, I remember when the original USFL was proposed and everything, that there were some studies done saying, yes, there's an appetite for spring football. But when it came to, and again, we're going back, like you said earlier about the AAF, were there studies done by any of these leagues to say, hey, here's what we're pretty sure the market is, and here's how we need to, here's where we start and here's where we can go from there? Have you ever seen anything that resembles a business plan for any of the leagues?
I mean, my understanding of this business plan is they're basically taking what worked from both and trying to make it completely work.
So the lessons learned basically is their kind of their lesson plan.
So look, here's the thing that I keep getting, and both of them took a little bit different approaches. We know that they both did hubs, but they were extremely different hubs.
Right.
The USFL took the approach of we're only doing certain financial investments into certain things to add funds into it if it makes sense and we can not go into the red. Like Fox was hell-bent and still is, but like, especially given the fact that they were running a league by themselves as a TV company, they were hell-bent not going into the red. Fox, and I've done a lot of research on Fox as a company.
Yeah.
They're very, ever since they've sold money, or ever since they sold 21st Century Studios to Disney and some of their assets from TV and movies to become like a news and television company in particular, they're very careful with how they spend. They do take risks, but they are controlled risks a lot of the time.
Okay.
So, they did put in $150 million for 3 years was the original, but like when you consider like Vince McMahon's original proposal, $500 million, like that's pennies of dollars or drops in the bucket. And it's because they don't want to go in the red. They want to maintain, a steady profitability. And also they have to appease to investors in their company. And if investors see it's a money loser, they're going to get pressured to back away. So, that's why you see Fox, how they reported, yes, both years of the USFL was profitable for Fox. They made money off the league both years. But, and I think no joke, I think my dad said it best when we were on vacation this past December, because he was asking about it and he started talking. I personally think, and he put it best, that Fox saw the tunnel and went, I think we've maximized where we can go before it gets too risky to then start losing dollars, because they did go out to 4 hubs. Now, 3 of them were the home hubs you see right now that are left: Memphis, Michigan, and Birmingham. And, you know, all of them combined did pretty solid. Memphis was a good market last year. Michigan, you know, it's a bigger NFL market, but like by their standards, it did well. Birmingham, a lot of people tell you, at least fans there, and you know, even the eye test will tell you that one might have not performed as well as it was expected to be, given that it was the hub for the first season entirely. Right. And I think that summarization is they might have felt like they maximized their potential. And I also believe that between the 2 leagues, and given their mission that they want to sell these franchises to people that want to buy in, and they just want to then sell them off so they can run the league itself, I think both realize that both competing against each other completely diminishes the chances of selling these franchises to people. Because here's the deal. You're in a market that's niche right now. First off, it's not super niche like arena football, but it's niche. You know, it's still, spring football still isn't fully accepted by casual fans in a football ecosystem. Second off, you have a niche market with 2 competitors trying to sell you the same thing that hasn't worked in its history.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this as my dad's talking about this, and I'm like, this just makes so much sense. Why would I want to go buy something from, like, say I want to buy maybe not the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks I think would be very sellable. Say I want to go buy the Roughnecks. We'll go with that. You know, Houston's been solid, but if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at that, and you're an investment bank that the XFL hired, much like the USFL hired their own, and they said, hey, this is a pretty good deal. You know, you can get pretty good value. It's not like billions of dollars like an NFL franchise. You're getting, you know, near 1 million viewers a game on your games. And, you know, you can start this thing out in the spring. You don't have much competition. It's great. But then you're the investor that's smart and you go, that's cool and all, but what about the other league? How can you guarantee that you guys will survive and that one doesn't thrive? Right. And I think that's what is not being talked about enough, is I think that was part of the end game. They're going, you know what? We kind of have to do this if both of us want to have the same vision. If both of us want to sell franchises, we kind of have to be the only game in town selling the franchises.
Right.
Yeah, because you can't give them another option or worry for a property that has not succeeded. You have to be the only game in town to do that.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Though it does make me wonder, you know, I mean, here we are. I mean, why didn't these 2 leagues think of that before? However, but like you said, it's their business model appears to be learning from the recent past.
And thus lies the other threshold, I think, and turn the clock back to July 2nd this past year, you know, after the USFL championship. Ratings come out, both average between cable and broadcast TV within 2,000 viewers of each other. If one of them flat out beat the other, and I'm talking like, we're talking like, I would say 100,000 plus. Yeah. Say one was easily 100,000 plus, or maybe even like a quarter, like 25% more. I think they keep going separately and they try and dog it out. And the other one starts talking. But I think because they were so dead even, like you can even tell Daryl Johnston went out and publicly said he was surprised how low the USFL TV numbers were for a second-year league, because they had the broadcast partners they had with NBC and Fox. And I think it's because they both went and said, you know what, these numbers, I don't think are going to move much more unless we just eliminate the options. I mean, even the fan base discourse, you know, that still shows a split. You're taking markets and saying, well, do you really want to watch like the USFL when you've got St. Louis in your backyard? You know, Memphinians who are just down the way off the Mississippi River. Do you really care about the Battlehawks if you have the showboats right in town? Like this is what you're dealing with. You remove those barriers. Now now you're invested entirely in all of this, you know, more travel opportunities, more eyeballs. The ratings in theory will look so much better to an investor and to advertisers and folks that want to get in, because they want to get back up to those 2020 numbers. I mean, we're talking like XFL was hitting $1 million a game easy, and they did it where everything was what the fans wanted. The USFL, yeah, they had one season alone, but remember the hub had so much impact on the perception of how this was viewed that I almost feel like that, well, not almost, but you can tell, that perception won out. I thought they would go away. I was wondering if it would go away, but even the hardcore fans that I thought would ignore it, a lot of them, they couldn't look past it. And I think this is part of that whole trend. They want to get back to that XFL 2020 look. It's the only game in town. It's the most professional second game in town. It has everything you want from a football league in the NFL, but it's just not the NFL. That's it. That was what the XFL was. It promoted itself well and had everything an NFL fan wants in terms of comfort. That's the goal. Secondly, besides selling the franchises, is get those ratings, the comfort levels for fans to go with it.
So do you think they're in a good position to basically recapture that magic of 2020?
I think right now that I'm mostly on the side of yes, because of some of the metrics I have been given from people that are running a lot of the community groups that handle this. Also, a lot of the social postings I've seen. I think a lot of people I've talked to, we see a lot more of the NFL fan talking about the league again, much like how the XFL was talked about 3 years ago. Well, now 4 years ago, leading in, because you keep in mind, it's the only advertisement on ABC and on Fox. One thing the USFL couldn't get, and I think this was another thing that was a failure, was not a failure, but something that was a missed opportunity. And it's just because of the relationship they had. NBC was a third party, and they almost treated like the USFL like they didn't give a damn about it. Like there were never promos on there. There were maybe banners once in a while about it, but you would watch it, but the advertising was so minuscule compared to like what it is now. Like ABC and Fox on FS1, ESPN, and Fox and ABC channels, I mean, they're going hardcore into this, Greg. Like it is consistent.
Yeah, because I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're seeing what I don't see. I mean, obviously here in Japan, I can, I can watch on DAZN.
I can watch. America, it's consistent barrage. Any sporting event right now, especially ESPN, where you can say, hey, it is a combined, multiple networks are on one page. So you can
kind of like
you
with
don't
the
have to
NFL
worry
now,
about
where the
you don't have to
NFL's
worry.
at
You can
with
take
the networks.
Yes, you can take a UFL ad and make it generic and slap it anywhere else, and it can be a promo. That is all it is. So, it doesn't have to be about, like say like how Fox was doing it, where Fox is doing Fox-centric promos, but they would never advertise the NBC games.
Right.
Which I felt was a mistake, by the way. I felt like they should have been advertising all the games across network, but they didn't do it that way. I don't know why, but it feels like this time around, it's going to be across network, which is so much smarter because it keeps every audience on every channel in line. Okay. You're not just assuming it's on Fox. You're not associating, it's just Fox. And you're leaving some people that maybe forget it's on NBC or USA, like they did in the USFL, or vice versa to a degree-ish. This time it's like, I know where it's at. I got 4 channels. They've been advertising 4 channels the entire time, and it's the same ad on all 4 of the channels.
And that was like my biggest hang up with the XFL, because you had to go, if you got to go look for something, you're not going to get the average viewer.
Well, why would I go to FX? That was my thing,
Yeah, but it's like, if you're a guy, hey, I want this XFL, where do I find it? And if you got to spend time scrolling your phone, I mean, everybody's got a phone, so the finding stuff now is way easier than what it used to be when I grew up.
Oh yeah.
But just still, trying to get that casual fan. So last year, I think it was during the summer, it was after the season. I sat down with our buddy Mike Lathrop with the Player 54 podcast.
Great dude, by the way, and also part of PFN too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
another great asset to our team. Absolutely.
And he has had me on his show twice. I brought him in, what was it, a month ago, to sit down with him and Tim Hanlon to talk, as the title of the show goes, Can America Ever Love Spring Football? So when Mike and I sat down the last time on a show, he wanted to get the international perspective about the XFL
Mhm.
because there were promises made that the XFL was going to be a big thing, and
Then they certainly did make it that way, that it was going to
yeah,
be
and
international.
as I had to burst the bubble going, yeah, nobody's heard of the XFL in Japan because it, nobody's heard of the X League in Japan, so it's a non-entity. To be able to watch the XFL for a guy like me, and then really anybody who is basically, doesn't have an antenna and doesn't have cable, because that's kind of the way, people are cutting the cord with cable, switching over to an antenna, people are going to that, but the technologies are changing with antennas, with ATC 3.0 coming up, standards and everything. So to be able to watch to be able to watch the UFL this coming season, is it predominantly going to be, they've got the over the air set. They're going over the air for most of the games, or has that been decided yet?
Yeah, I don't know enough
Okay.
because they haven't. So they've shown the main four channels, but there's nothing revealed yet on what their digital plan is.
Okay.
If we're looking at, I think, like digital assets that both companies own. So Fox is heavily invested in Tubi. That is their big like play. For anyone that doesn't know, Tubi is a Fox owned entity. It is a free streaming service that they have been running. It's like one of the
It's
top 10 most watched streaming services
Yeah,
in the
it's
world.
basically the Fox version of Pluto TV, which is the CBS version of
Exactly.
Tubi.
Free advertised supported television.
Yeah.
Fast is what it's called. So Fox has Tubi. They did put both seasons of the USFL on Tubi for games that were Fox games. So that was their plan. But the thing was, unlike what ESPN did, they wouldn't put the games on immediately after air. Fox was a little weird. They would do, if you wanted to watch the games immediately after they aired, you can only watch it on foxsports.com or the Fox Sports app with a cable subscription package login.
Right.
And
And
it
that's
was,
completely what screwed me, because I
yeah,
wasn't
and
able to
it
watch
was to
anything.
push their app. It's basically like,
Yeah.
hey, our app has this. It's on demand stuff for you. So like, here you go. But they would put on all the games later after the season. That's what they've done both years. ESPN and via Disney, their plan with the XFL was, let's just post the games immediately after they're done on ESPN Plus, because the way they did it, and this is how I watched all the XFL games, or ones I did watch until the USFL season when I had to start covering the USFL more closely, is any game that's XFL they had on ESPN Plus. It didn't matter if it was over the air television on ABC or ESPN or FX or
Right.
ESPN2, as long as you had that like at the time $7.99 subscription a month, you could go on there, click a game, and watch a game. And I'll admit that was pretty sweet. I actually did like it. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know if it's been,
that's the way I watched it.
yeah. I mean, there were some people claiming that like ratings were hurt because of it. I have no idea how many watch, but
Ah,
I'll be frank with you, just because my industry is TV.
yeah.
Like audiences like that for stuff like that are minuscule. And that is just doing my
Well,
research on that. That's
yeah.
why a lot of streamers don't report numbers at
Well,
times.
that's what always got me last year with the reports. And I made it a point. I'm not making a point here not to name names of in the XFL, old XFL, USFL, UFL media. But when I would
Right.
see, hey, but we don't know the streaming numbers, I would always say, well, if they knew the streaming numbers, that was always what people hung their hat on with the
If they
ratings.
if they were significant enough, they would have said something in a PR like ESPN always does.
Yeah,
Them saying nothing shows you that it didn't have that much impact. I mean,
right.
and that's probably on the upper end, because Peacock, I imagine, was not exactly the USFL cash cow for NBC either, but it added an extra part of their package.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's great for like access, but it doesn't bring in all the viewership
It
ratings and the
doesn't bring in the
advertiser numbers.
it doesn't bring in the casual viewer, which is what the league needs
Mhm.
if it's going to grow. Because to use the NFL for as a good example, back in the 1950s, it was that game. I mean, I could have an argument as to which game
Right.
was, but everybody talks about the 1958 NFL championship, which attracted the casual viewer, and that began the golden age of football in America on TV.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, in order to get, I mean, they've listen. It doesn't matter if you're XFL, USFL fan, you're committed to this season. And anybody who's out there saying, "Well, my team's not in it, I'm not going to watch." Bull. And if you're saying that, you're the same guy that bought burned your Kaepernick jersey, and now is complaining about Taylor Swift.
No,
So, but
I highly imagine you're going to see those fans tune in. I mean, we had
yeah,
guys that
yeah,
they were banned. Like we had guys from the USFL that were Bandits fans, and when the
right,
Bandits got knocked down in 2020 for 2023, they just migrated over to the
yeah,
XFL and watched the Guardians or like something
right,
else, or they watched
yeah,
and supported a different team. Like
yeah, because it's
there's always going to
football.
be. It's a small contingent in the grand scheme of football, but like the hardcore groups, that's
Yeah,
what like spring football is. So you're going to watch. You
right,
know, I think the question is, do you do enough as a broadcast company and as a league
yeah,
to entice them even further and to then get more people that are like curiously on the fence about watching and then committing and stacking up more and more. That's how you get the casual buzz about, oh, it's cool to talk about in the office. I'm not even like a hardcore football fan, but
right,
like I got to talk about it because everyone else is talking about it,
yeah,
type of thing. That's what everyone wants to eventually get to, but we're still a little ways off even doing that. I do wonder what their digital strategy will be. Like the TV side, it's pretty simple. You have two of the largest over-the-air television networks in the country, both synonymous with football in some
yeah,
way. ABC now is more recently doing it Monday Night Football again, but they've done football for decades now. But like ABC and Fox, and you have, without a doubt, the two largest cable sports networks in the country. Like, yes, ESPN is by far number one, but FS1 isn't any slouch either.
right.
It's still it's a definitive number two. So, but like those are good brands to be in. People know those brands very well. The digital one is what I wonder what they're going to do. I honestly, just basing it off my kind of just digging into like the XFL YouTube page and what they've been
Yeah.
doing off season wise, which by the way, you see they're rebranding all the pages to UFL kind of, they're taking like XFL ones and doing that slowly.
Did they change their Twitter account?
The Twitter account hasn't changed yet, but I'm surprised
Okay.
they haven't because I don't know. I think it's because the UFL's taken and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with it, with like the tag, because they've done Facebook. You can look at Facebook right now. Like the old
Yeah, yeah,
XFL
but
page is the
it's
UFL
on,
page.
on Twitter. I'm like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There's still no UFL Twitter page.
Yeah, they don't have it on Twitter, and I think Instagram they haven't done it either,
Yeah.
and I don't believe they have on TikTok either. But I'll have to check that again.
But yeah.
But what they're doing on YouTube and what the XFL did, and I think this is kind of smart for like video engagement specifically, even though you can go find these on ESPN Plus, they're putting slowly games from last year, full games,
Oh,
on their
good.
YouTube page. Now, I know that doesn't really, like, it's ad revenue. It's not like paying a subscription to go and check it out somewhere. But if you want the most free and accessible way to get people interested in this thing, and say your friends want to watch or something, doesn't hurt to be able to just quickly rip the broadcast and throw it onto a YouTube page. Now that's going to have to come down to both companies, Fox and Disney, being okay with that, which is going to be a little tricky, I think, because both of them, as I just said,
Right.
different strategies on how they're doing content post live. But to me, it's the best way to grow a natural audience.
Right.
It's
Yeah, I agree
maybe
100%
on the
with you.
fence, but doesn't want to put up the cost of buying
Yeah,
cable or,
right. Well,
the time to sit down and use a live time to watch it.
I've been making that same argument for years with the Canadian Football League.
Well, and they're getting their act together too, I must say. I really like
We'll
what they've been
see.
doing
We'll
lately.
see. They have been, but we'll see because I always use the NFL because it is the example of how you grow and build a league and be very, very successful. That the CFL has never really, gotten the gumption to say, hey, we're going to be, if we're going to be number two, we're going to be a hard number two. No pun intended, but you know, and just do stuff like that. Put stuff on YouTube because in order to get the younger fans, which I don't think the UFL is ever going to have a problem with if it succeeds
Mm.
in getting the younger fan, but putting that stuff up there for free so people can stumble upon it going, hey, what the hell is this? And get and generate interest. Um, but what the UFL is doing, if they do it right with YouTube, yeah, I mean, because YouTube is, I think maybe did I say this? I probably maybe I said this to you or not, but to me, YouTube is the world's biggest UHF channel.
It kind of is, you know. I think it's not a bad way of describing it, you know.
Because everything, if you want to find anything, I mean, hell, I'm being here in Japan, YouTube's my go-to for basically everything. You know,
I call it the internet's archive,
yeah,
essentially. I mean, that's what it's going to be. That's essentially what it's becoming now. Like we have over a decade. We now already have over a decade's worth of content, pushing two in a few years. That's going to be like anything and everything from 20 years ago, you know,
yeah,
and it's going to keep growing like that. And as long as YouTube, for some reason, doesn't have a catastrophic failure, it needs to shut down. But I think it's almost like a too big to lose thing. But like that's the perfect platform. Everyone goes on YouTube. Like whenever you do metrics on like most watched like streaming and you include YouTube, YouTube by far is the most used video platform on the planet. Only one that comes close to it is Netflix. But again, that's because you have to pay. But like YouTube's free.
yeah,
You know, as long as you have something that connects to the internet and doesn't have an insanely low like dial-up bit rate internet connection,
yeah,
you can watch YouTube.
yeah,
And that to me and many makes a lot of sense. But like I said, it's the whole thing about like how the companies operate too. Like, and I think to me, I could see Disney doing this a little more so. Maybe Fox would if they got the right argument. But like
right,
one thing I do say about Fox, they are still very much committed to several of the more traditional TV principles. That is, they want you to have the cable bundle. They want you to invest
yeah,
into the cable TV package. They feel like there's value still in the cable TV package. I'm taking this also from Lachlan Murdoch, who's the CEO of Fox, who has basically said these things in interviews and conference calls on record. So, it's two different philosophies still.
yeah,
Because as much as I want to believe that should be the play, I fear Fox, especially given that by the layout of the league ownership, if I am calculating this right in my head, in theory, they are slightly the biggest investor in this new league. If it's 50-50 split and only 150% and only one side of the USFL was ownership, by that default, they are the slight majority owner in this whole conglomeration. If it is truly 50-50 in terms of like the original setup with the XFL,
right,
So I don't know, but like
yeah,
Fox would be the big thing, would be, I think, the big player where I would say, I'm not sure they would go for that plan with YouTube
okay,
personally, but
okay,
there's always a will, there's a way if they feel
yeah,
like that's the best way to do it. It'd be the easy way to get casual fans. I think is promoting game replays are available next day or like midweek
right,
on YouTube. I think it'd be a great
yeah,
play. Do a
yeah,
highlights package like the night, like the day of, or like at least that night, and then throw the game on there like 3 days later. You can do it. It's
yeah,
very possible. I work in TV. I know you can do this. It
yeah,
comes down to how they view the value of the media themselves. Do they really want to throw it out there for free? Can they get someone to buy a subscription with this value? Can they get them to buy a cable package? That's the final denominator
right,
to them putting it
right.
on YouTube, honestly.
Right. And one final question when it comes to streaming and everything, at least with the UFL. So we don't, if I'm hearing you correctly, then we are the games, and this is, it's a selfish question for me because, um, are they, are they going to do this year what they did last year with the XFL and stream the games on ESPN Plus at the same time they're on other platforms?
Again, I don't know. I
Okay.
think
I
they're
just want to make sure
saving.
I couldn't, I just, I pardon me, I'm stammering here.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's
No, no,
okay.
no. But in our talk here, I didn't hear that from it. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, yeah, you just don't know yet. We haven't heard if it's
Yeah,
going to be
I think
because
we won't. I think we won't know until probably around, honestly, when the schedule drops, they're going to drop the TV. And I imagine
Right.
that's when you'll get it. Like you'll get the international broadcast, like, who's doing that, much like how both leagues did, or at least the USFL did that. I don't know if the XFL
Well,
ever did it.
last year, help me out here. Last year, did the USFL have an international outlet?
I thought they did at one point. I know for a fact they were on Armed Forces Network.
They were, but here's the problem there. Okay, even though I'm a veteran and I have access to a lot of things that retired military people do here, just using the Armed Forces Network, you've got to be living in an area. You basically got to be living on base to watch that.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Now, when it came to ESPN Plus, you needed a VPN. And it wasn't just any VPN would do. You had to have one specific VPN to access ESPN Plus. So, shout out to ExpressVPN for keeping me in the loop last year with spring football but I learned the hard way. So
Mhm.
I guess if, obviously the league is concerned about growing the domestic game, which is understandable, but there's a whole legion, even though we're small, of people outside the US that, we can watch football. We're going to find a way to watch football overseas. So, and if that means somebody's got to pirate a YouTube, the pirated YouTube, which, that was about the only way I could watch some college ball this year was
Right.
some guys getting very creative. And then at some point I'm sitting there watching, it's like, don't they know they could go to jail for this, for streaming this stuff? It's okay to receive it.
Ooh,
It's
yeah.
not okay to be streaming something like that.
Yeah,
So
you gotta be careful.
you got to be
You
very
know,
careful.
gotta be very careful. Um, and actually, I just jogged my memory by the way of because I swore it was this. DAZN was the other one. That was the main international partner.
It
So
was
basically what they did is they had 14 games last year, the playoffs, championship, and one game select per week, and they did DAZN as a live stream partner.
really, and I have the zone. I didn't know that, so I wasn't
Yeah, I mean
really
I remember they put out pressers for each season. I just was not 100% until I had to recheck that to make sure that it
okay.
was DAZN, but it was DAZN for each one of the seasons they had for international streaming
Okay,
rights.
all right.
Um,
Well,
and then
last year,
and
yeah,
then like a select each, like I think like it looks like 5 markets had like specific TV channels they would run through
okay.
to do that.
Okay. Well, for now, I mean, I didn't know about the USFL being on DAZN. Obviously, ESPN Plus for the XFL, but I've got
I would
DAZN.
be
So
99% sure DAZN's going to probably be the UFL partner.
I would think so. That's a
Just
good point.
given their relationship with Fox the last 2 years, I would be surprised if they didn't do it.
Right.
Although ESPN, because it's so international of its own company, I don't know, but like I feel like DAZN will be involved in some way.
I would too, especially now since
Yeah.
the zone has the NFL International Game Pass,
Mm-hmm.
which for anybody listening out there who's tried to watch the zone on a Google TV, they've I've had issues with the zone and their app, at least with one at least with one of my smart TVs, not all, but if you have a phone, you can stream it. It's not a big deal, but
Yeah, I
um,
know DAZN in the US is like the boxing channel. That's all I know it for is like
yeah,
just boxing, but like tons of boxing
right,
and mixed martial art combat. But
yeah, they've got
it's
a ton. It
amazing. You
just
do more research on DAZN, and it's basically like the default international sporting channel for
yeah,
US sports. It's kind of
yeah,
crazy how much they have for rights on
yeah.
DAZN.
Well, here in Japan, I mean, that's the main way to watch Japanese baseball.
I wonder, and I'm not trying to get too sidetracked, but like
Nah, that's okay,
you
man.
and I have talked VPNs. I
Yeah,
almost wonder if you could get a VPN in the US, get a DAZN subscription, and then just like flip flop the VPN.
yeah, you can,
Like, what?
you
Oh my
can,
God, I I could cheat the system hard with that.
you could. You know what? And it's interesting too because you remember the CFL. Okay, so the CFL stream their games for free internationally, but well, I'm
And
in the
I
U.S.
love that because I use that when I
Yeah,
had free time every time.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, a VPN basically it's cheat mode. And but you got to have the right VPN, and like I said, ExpressVPN. Um, I've always had great luck with them. Anybody else? Nah,
Hmm.
because I don't know what it is, but they've got the magic to make for at least with ESPN Plus, and you know,
Yeah, that's
it,
good. It's good
it's
to
tech.
know.
Yeah. So if you're looking for cheat mode, man, that would
I'm
be the one I'd use.
I most certainly will be
Yeah.
because yeah, at least if it's depending on what I can find. I'll be honest with you, this is the one thing that's going to kill me is I know I can afford it, but going back to paying $73 a month to do cable come March because I have to keep up with the league. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
doing the UFO podcast. How could I
Right.
go on every week and only go off 2 games highlights? The other two I watch on over the air. Like, you know, I'm going to have to do that. That's my
Yeah.
other argument, I guess, if you want for
Yeah.
like
And
releasing on YouTube or some free
yeah.
platform. Honestly, if they did it on Tubi, because Tubi's free,
Hmm.
it's just that it's only Fox's. Like this is where it gets weird because like Fox at least could kind of control more of the USFL media. Now with the split, like this is where I'm like, I really want to get to the schedule day and just see
Yeah.
how they do it because you can't. To me, if I'm Fox, I would not allow like ESPN to have like all of them on ESPN Plus.
Well,
It
and
just makes no sense. Same
and
with like Tubi. If I'm Disney, I'm like, I'm not gonna let you have my games on Tubi. Are you crazy? Like,
yeah.
they're my rights. This is the split we made. So like, I really want to see what they do. Like, what
Yeah.
the digital thing is the main curiosity. It
Yeah.
it
And
really is my last curiosity.
because I mean, realistically, I mean, the way the world's going, everybody's going mobile, and everybody's watching on their computer, smart TV, and phone. And I mean, over the air is always going to be there, but you and I both know that with technology changing,
Right.
it's not so easy. Your TV breaks, you go buy a new TV. Now you got to figure out how to read. There's just so much that goes into bringing a new TV into the house and setting it up that you didn't have back,
Mm-hmm.
go say, 20 years ago. And you didn't have to scan channels. It was boom, you turn your TV on, boom, you just click channel 7, you're good. But
I'll tell you what I do. You did mention ATSC 3. I'm
yeah,
glad you did because
is it ATS or ATC? I thought ATS.
ATSC.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you if that is everything it's cracked up to be, where it's like they can send data to your television via, the signal, like betting odds, like an app or like some sort of sidebar on the side or like
Hmm.
interactivity, like that will help television a ton. Cause like otherwise, like we're talking about access with sports. TV is basically becoming like the main avenue for sports and it's evolving how they do content anyway, to the point where like it is pretty much, if not very close to being what radio was,
Oh yeah.
decades ago, where it's now a legacy thing. And, even radio, it's now like it's a legacy thing, but now it's like, how long is sports radio going to last? Or how's the
Yeah.
radio industry going to look in like 50 years? Cause like, I'll tell you, I got out doing radio in like 2020, and I didn't think it was going to be looking great here come another 2 decades. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, you remember, the Elon Musk, they were going to take the AM radios out of the electric vehicles, and there was big pushback there. So with
There's still
technology,
enough people that use them, man. That's just the
there
thing.
is. And when the shit hits the fan, hey, the phones are great and everything, but once those cables get cut, you still need to revert back to the old fashioned way. And, I think radio will always be there, especially, but like you said, I mean, just things have changed so much. So,
Yeah.
speaking of change, it's a
Changes.
hard segue and a hard turn to the other league I want to talk about while I got you here, and that is the Arena Football League.
Oh, goody. Oh,
So
goody.
I mean, I'm just going to start fresh because you know what? I kind of, in passing, kind of follow what's going on with the Arena Football League that it's supposed to restart. Okay, what's really going on, man? Where are we at with everything?
So it is restarting. The plan for a good minute now has been that they are starting April 27th. That is week one. Have a 10-week season, followed by followed by 2 weeks of playoffs, and then a championship in July,
Okay.
in late July. Pardon me. Um, it's still 16 teams. It's gonna be eight. It's gonna be four conferences. They haven't said anything on or four divisions. They haven't said anything on conferences yet. So kind of waiting to see how that plays out. But like the early synopsis is that they're gonna at least do like, the top two in each division play each other in the playoffs. It looks like, but we're waiting to see that. Um, Beyond that, I mean, I can give you the team names if that's what you want me to do now too. I can give you everything.
Nah, well, you can give me
frankly.
whatever you want, man. We got all. I mean, we got plenty of time here.
Well, sure.
You're
okay.
up.
Well, I'll read off the divisions and teams next.
Okay.
So, you got the divisions. You got East, South, Central, and West. East Division, and some of these you'll recognize because they do have legacy brands. It's just they're different logos now, different owners than before, is the deal. So, the East Division has the Philadelphia Soul, the Minnesota Myth. That's a brand new team. The Albany Firebirds and the Nashville Cats. In the South Division, you got the West Texas Desert Hawks, which are out of Odessa, Texas, the Orlando Predators, the Georgia Force, and the Louisiana Voodoo, which is taking the name from the New Orleans Voodoo, but now it's Louisiana instead. Central Division, you have the Iowa Rampage, Salina Liberty out of Salina, Kansas, the Southwest Kansas Storm out of Dodge City, Kansas, and the Wichita Regulators out of, Wichita, Kansas. I'll explain why that is the case a little bit later. And then in the West, you have the Oregon Black Bears out of Salem, Oregon, the Washington Wolfpack out of Everett, Washington, the Rapid City Marshals out of Rapid City, South Dakota, and the Billings Outlaws out of Billings, Montana. So that's the 16.
Did I miss Chicago Rush?
So part of that, I will also explain to you right now. Perfect segue to this. So there were two other teams announced during the lead up to this. Originally, they put outwards of 20 markets that they were potentially looking at and were saying they were going to go to on social media. Two of those were Arizona and Chicago. And both those teams do exist. The explanation for the Rush is that they do have an owner. They have already done apparently a press event to discuss what their plans are. They are not doing a season because they felt it was not going to be done in a proper fashion. So they are pushing off to 2025.
Okay.
The Arizona Bandits, it's a little more is what the Arizona team's called. It's not the Rattlers. The Rattlers are still in the indoor football league. But they're in the same city is what the plan is, to be in like that Maricopa County area that you and I know so well.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's kind of complicated. Personally, my honest take on this whole thing, and just based on what their social media was, they were originally planning to be in Glendale.
Okay.
They were negotiating they were at least talking to the mayor of Glendale, and they were at least talking with Desert Diamond Arena, which was the former home of the Coyotes and was at one point the home of the Arizona Rattlers.
Right.
Rattlers
and for anybody who doesn't know Arizona, Glendale basically, you got Glendale in the west, and you've got Phoenix proper, central, and then you've got the east. So it's really spread out when it
Maricopa
comes
County
to
is
huge. It's huge. I mean, you can see the curvature of the earth because I mean, you look west and it's. I always say Glendale's like basically going to California, out in Surprise in that area. So
it kind of has that vibe. It really, honestly.
Well, I mean,
like
where
Glendale
you're at
is kind of that way. I've been there. I've been enough.
Yeah, where you live at compared to where Glendale is, man, I wouldn't want that drive.
I'm in suburbia where I'm at.
Yeah,
in Maricopa,
but where you're at, I mean, that drive just, But anyway, I digress. But so
So to keep this going, so the Bandits wanted to go to Desert Diamond, is what my understanding was, just based on social media and like just gauging some of the stuff they were posting about. In comes the Arizona Rattlers. They were playing at Footprint Center, where the Phoenix Suns play. They basically were sharing a venue.
And this was
They
downtown.
used to be in Glendale at Desert Diamond's former name. They used to be there, but they moved downtown. They wanted to be in downtown Phoenix and more in that location where more the proper, like, where more of like their footprint is for arena sports and baseball. So they went there. But here's where it gets weird, and where I have also talked, and someone has basically confirmed to me that this is a move that was made in essence because of the AFL trying to go to Arizona. So the Bandits were trying to go to Glendale. The Rattlers, out of the blue, say we are moving to Glendale. And I'm like, no previous evidence or anything that they were going to do it. No one in the industry thought it was going to happen that I've talked to. Just out of the blue, they said we're moving back to Desert Diamond Arena. And this was after the Bandits posted that they were talking to the mayor of Glendale about trying to locate to Glendale. Put the pieces together, and the said talks I've had, basically the Rattlers blocked, from what I understand, the Bandits from really getting into the market to start. My understanding as well is that they have a deal with Footprint Center to where they can't have competition go to Footprint Center. So
wait, the Rattlers can block then the Bandits from going downtown at what I still call
it's an agreement basically with
the old America West Arena.
Well, Footprint Center is what it's called now, but yes, basically the two biggest arenas in the county, they have essentially locked up and said, well, we can't let you get in. We have a, like, I think it's, if I remember the conversation I had right with the person, it's like a 3-year deal with Footprint Center that you can't have a competitive like entity in it, and that they will work with the Rattlers. So the only option in town that made sense right away, that since I've moved here, is Mullet Arena. And Mullet Arena is a 5,000 seat hockey venue. Fits arena football. It's just not 15,000 or so seats like Desert Diamond was.
Where is that at in terms
Tempe.
of this? Okay, Tempe. Isn't there one more arena further out over by the Indian Reservation, over by Scottsdale?
There is one, I believe I don't remember the casino name, but I don't know if it's like suitable for arena football.
Okay.
Is the other, because remember, you also have to have it where it fits the nets. The ceiling has to be at least a decent size. Is the whole spiel. But
okay, gotcha.
But basically their next plan, and they posted a video visiting Mullet Arena and checking out the venue after the Rattlers took Desert Diamond. Essentially they ran out of time. They I think there was the people that I talked to on that like are connected more to the AFL. They thought it was going to get done, that they were going to go to Mullet. At least my understanding, it didn't happen. But I do believe that still is the plan. They just want to recoup, because I think Glendale was going to was at least possibly in the cards, but the Rattlers are the trusted bigger property in town, and if they come asking, you're going to appease to them right out of the gate. Is the deal. So it's in city competition, and I will say a good chunk of that falls on the AFL for wanting to be in the market and being aggressive that way. But it's also a business tactic that I went, oh, good. That's very friendly of you.
Yeah. And also too, I mean, the Rattlers have been around for 30 plus years now. So,
right. I mean, look, they're the big kings in town. Yeah. I don't at all think that, I don't at all like misunderstand the move. Like they are being actively threatened by a league that wants to beat out their own league in competition, and has said it in a public setting several times.
Right.
It's just that they took the very extreme measure of saying, yeah, you can get a venue, but good luck getting like a professional venue in town.
That is huge. Though, with that said, I mean, there's with indoor football in a city that size, as spread out as it is, especially when you can even consider the traffic, because I remember way back when I was in the Navy doing my Navy Reserve down, over by Papago.
Yeah.
And having to drive out to Glendale. Heck, on a Sunday with good traffic, that's
across town for those that don't know. Like Papago is complete opposite side of like Phoenix Metro.
Right.
So
So I mean, it's so. But I would think that there's plenty of room in that city for two indoor teams, especially given where Glendale is located versus
When I
where the
and
downtown is.
I think that the audiences can fit too. It's a big county, first off,
Yeah,
but look, Mullet Arena, which I think is still the plan. It sounds like that they're going to try. They want to play next year. I
right.
think they just want to evaluate if that is indeed the venue they're doing, and everything else they can recoup and not rush. It's also Don Arbett's team. Don Arbett, for those that don't know, very successful arena football coach, championship coach for the San Jose SaberCats back in the day. He was coaching the IFL for a few years for the not the San Jose Panthers, basically the Oakland Panthers. I'm spacing
Yeah.
on the Bay Area Panthers is what they call themselves
Okay.
now. But he then moved on from them last year. He now is going to be coaching the Bandits when they launch. So you want to get this launch right, is the thing. Plus, keep in mind, like we said, for them, they're getting into a market with a big boy in the industry.
Yeah.
So like you don't want to rush this. Like there's challenges and interference,
Right.
but you can wait. And keep in mind, there's 16 teams. They're kind of the rush to get these 16 teams is a bigger story than the Bandits being existing right now.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good time to segue into maybe a question you have about the 16 current existing. Because
well, it gets I was gonna you read my mind. With these 16 teams, are they gonna? I would be very blunt about it.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a one and done year with the AFL, or are we going to have these teams around for season two? Because as you and I both know, that the history of the Arena Football League having teams continue. I mean, it's been one franchise folding after. It's basically you have a new Arena Football League every year. At least that's what it was before, with so many franchises folding and then new ones coming in. Where do you see? You see the Arena Football League with staying power this time. Do they have a decent business plan? What's your gut telling you? I mean, it's
right.
kind of there's. I mean, you're you really are the expert on this because you've done the Inside the Walls podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Your arena. So what's your gut telling you? What do you think?
My current gut feeling is that there needs to be. They're getting stuff on track, but they're very rushed right now. I do. This is very much something that is a course correction at the moment. I'm very cautious. There's optimism in that caution. I do see potential with markets they have, and it really comes down to how these teams have presented themselves and how they've done things since the league announced itself. And it's a mix. I'll be honest, Greg. It really is. Like here's how the current situation is with the league. So when the league started, they recruited two teams from the NAL, the Predators, and then formerly the West Texas Warbirds, who are now the Desert Hawks. So they got two NAL teams. They then got out of essentially a collapse of the Champions Indoor Football League, or Champions Indoor Football. They got 5 teams out of that league collapsing and splitting up. So that would be Billings, Wichita, Southwest Kansas, Salina, and Rapid City.
Right.
I can tell you for a fact, at least in terms of we're talking about opinions and views on those teams, the CIF teams are not looked at as teams that people feel will survive next year.
Right.
Okay. The CIF, for all intents and purposes, and rumors I have understood about how they've operated, we're talking about teams that have operated paying players base salary of, I believe, $150 a game. And the current rumored, though very much confirmed at multiple junctions, base salary in the AFL is $1,000. Not crazy if we're talking compared to the UFL.
Right.
But in arena terms, I mean, we're talking like,
that's huge.
We're talking a big leap in pay, like a massive leap in pay per player. So, especially for the CIF ones, right, that they're having to adjust to this cost. And that's also coming from the fact that some owners also came from these leagues too. The Iowa Rampage, their background is also from the CIF. So you have 6 of those teams that are CIF background. Meanwhile, if we're looking at the origins of teams, the Oregon Black Bears and the Washington Wolfpack. The Wolfpack, their start comes from semi-pro.
Okay.
They essentially are upscaling with the league's help to a AFL team. Now, credit, the guy leading them is former AFL, AF2 specifically, with the Everett Hawks. There has been a team in Everett, but it's a former semi-pro team. Oregon, Salem, Portland area that has had arena football in the past, but the origins of the Black Bears are from the American West Football Conference. It's about the same size to half the size smaller of the CIF, but similar pay scale in that regard. After that, the only other teams that really, I think, get kind of notes off the top of my head for ones that I like go, wow, that's pretty nice, is Albany, because Albany's ownership is basically NAL owners that were from the Albany Empire last year that are not named Antonio Brown.
Right.
And they are essentially learning from their mistakes and rebranding to a more famous brand in Albany. And that's been going really well. But you can see how very easily this puts you at ease. Like the CIF teams with the budget raise, some of the semi-pro to smaller league ownerships, they don't add confidence is the thing. Georgia, for example, and this is a story right now that is certainly affecting things. So Georgia got announced as the last team of the 16. And apparently they are going through an ownership change right now. Now, the reason why that's happening, and this is according to the commissioner, is that rival leagues called up those owners, and the arena they're going to play in, which is the Georgia State University basketball arena, and basically said that the AFL is no good and scared off the Georgia owners, is what their story is. So they are currently getting a new set of owners as contingency to get the Georgia Force going. The Georgia Force have been inactive since announced.
Oh, yeah.
So it's also about 2.5 months till season kickoff. Well, really 3, but still, things are needing to progress. There's a lot of that type of stuff. Some teams don't have websites up. 1 or 2 of them still don't have like full schedules out. You can piece them together,
right?
But they aren't fully out. And 2 of them, credit for different reasons, haven't announced their venues yet.
Okay.
Minnesota, which has been very active lately and is owned by the commissioner's wife, they haven't announced their venue. It's been rumored to be the Target Center up there in Minneapolis, but they haven't announced it. And the Philadelphia Soul, who
traveling team
have been rumored to be a travel team for a while, but they've been posting home game pieces onto new schedules, but they haven't announced their venue.
And so is Ron Jaworski part of that?
No. Originally he was reported by the Philadelphia Inquirer that he was going to be an advisor, but that was apparently incorrect. Right. He apparently has no affiliation with this version of Philadelphia Soul.
Okay.
And that's not to say that some people that are big names aren't affiliated. For example, the Nashville Cats, I think one of the best new franchises that have shown up in terms of like public relations and how they're showing off. Jeff Fisher is not only an advisor, he's like actively trying to build this team right now.
Okay.
So he's actively involved with the Nashville Cats. Kayvon Thibodeau, credit athlete ownership. As much as I did just kind of take a dump on Oregon a little bit, Kayvon Thibodeau is the majority owner of the Oregon Black Bears.
Okay.
So there is money there. There's apparently, it's been stated that the Louisiana Voodoo are owned by a celebrity, but they haven't revealed the celebrity.
Okay.
So there are people that, at least in some of these franchises, do have money or know how to run it.
Yeah.
It's just very all over the place.
To me,
apparently the league is also helping subsidize some of these costs depending on the market and what they can afford.
Yeah. To me, and at some point, to me, it has a World Football League feel right now. And I know at some point here, hopefully next week or the week after, we're going to be sitting down. Dave and I are going to, Dave, Fran and I are going to be sitting down with Mark Speck, the World Football
Yes.
League historian.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we're going to have him on. But to me, that's what this kind of feels like in the way you're describing it. That
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of all over the place. I mean, I can even go further. Like, for example, their website. It's their website digital partner is called Humble, and Humble's history, and you'll know as soon as I say it why it's brought a lot of conversation and some controversy. They claim is well, they're a Web 3.0 company. They basically have done a lot of investments into Web 3.0 crypto, like NFTs type of memorabilia items at the time, but now they're pivoting. They're trying to pivot into being like a platform where it's like Web 3.0 social media and web app design. The AFL is a big gamble for them. They have a deal with like where they split some ticket revenues and all that, but they're basically handling the website right now and all the digital items.
Okay.
But it's caused a lot of controversy because it's a Web 3.0 company. Saying Web 3.0 in anything for the general audience instantly throws a wrench into any conversation. And they've been spotty on a few things with the website too. But like you see it, like there's stuff happening that I see and I go, this is pretty sweet. For example, one of their partners they just revealed recently, it hasn't been revealed via PR, but it's been stated by the league's commissioner on their new league podcast, and it's on the website. They're partnering with Fanatics Live, which is Fanatics as of July. It's Fanatics' new like live stream commerce show channel, where basically they go to like do live events and do like memorabilia giveaways or like interviews with players and things like that. But apparently they're going to partner with them for live events at arenas. It's really cool. But the thing is, announcements like this happen, the website doesn't get updated. So like, it's always a question mark if something like that is actually happening.
Yeah.
And then you have a bunch of people kind of like throwing mud at each other. I'll give you another example. So I believe this was 2-3 weeks ago now. Lee Hutton, who's again, commissioner of the AFL, he's been doing a lot of rounds on fan shows. It's one thing his main way of getting out to fans has been is he'll go on fan shows, he'll talk about the league, drop a nugget or two, and you get those nuggets and you share them around. One thing he did in that show is he revealed that the apparel partner, well, he didn't say it that way. He said the apparel and jerseys are via Nike. And it got a lot of people into frenzy. It's Nike. It's a big deal, So, I mean, Nike's the top, apparel manufacturer. They're the NFL's apparel manufacturer and jersey maker. It's a big deal. And so we go on and people post about it, but then we get clarification via Arena Fan. Tim Capper, great guy over there and crew, and he gets clarification. The sideline apparel and the apparel that the league is going to be selling will be Nike, but they're doing the jerseys via BSN Sports, which BSN does a lot of like regional high school and like smaller league deals and all that. So it led a lot of people into a frenzy of complaining, and it's just kind of the cycle how it goes, Greg. You'll see them get a few steps in the right direction, and then they'll do a misstep or something like this,
or two steps up, one step back.
Yeah. And then the thing is, the AFL, a lot of this I think stems from the fact, and I don't knock people, it's the brand they are using. The AFL brand, and I know some people, like, look, the IFL has a quality brand in itself. There's no arguing that.
Right.
But when the AFL came back in February and it officially announced itself to the world, even with it being in the state it is right now and being kind of rushed up and, trying to fill the gaps, that league still beats the engagement and public connection with the sport over any well-established league like the IFL or the NAL. And that's the thing. A lot of people have a lot of connections to the AFL. They don't want to see it dragged through the mud by people that don't know what they're doing, supposedly. That's part of the deal. Then you have half the audience that I talk a lot with, and they're fans of the brand, period, and they believe in the vision. Lee Hutton is what many would describe easily as the dreamer archetype. He has grand plans, but as you've said on the show, hope can only get you so far,
Right.
And I think a lot of people are worried that it's the hope element, and you keep trying to feed the carrots, and then you start worrying about feeding too many carrots, and you're going, wait a minute, we still have to take care of the stuff in front of us before we can talk. For example, Lee Hutton's gone on record, and he has stated he wants to play games in Mexico, like showcase games like the NFL does. And he has people he knows in Mexico. He wants to do this stuff through. And I go, great. That sounds like a fantastic idea if you get established, but we need to be established. And I think that's what a lot of people come back to is like, hey, let's finish the stuff we have to do before you start throwing those things towards people. Cause I like it. Don't get me wrong. If you were to tell me this a year later and the league's stable, I'm good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. If you can do that feasibly, great. But you can't. And this is what I've been frustrated on. And I've done a video on it when they announced in New York City on a press conference that was for the original teams on my own personal YouTube page. You can't always be cart before the horse. You have to do some things by the book before you can just throw special things out into the wild like that.
Yeah, and, I agree 100%. I agree.
That's where a lot of this that's where a lot of this frustration comes with, Greg. Because I do see good things these teams are doing, but a lot of people are freaking out, and I justify it at the league level as to what's going on. Yeah. There's team owners that I think are doing good things, but the league very much is freaking people out, and a few of these teams and the way they've operated / have not gotten certain things done to this point does not at all help how people feel right now.
And then getting and following on that. So for, the AFL with the AFL. Okay. So the question I have is, are they going to be able to put asses in seats? And how can anybody, how can fans watch these games? And to me, that's the one I'm assuming. I probably, I'm basing this on all the other indoor leagues that are on YouTube. Is the AFL going to YouTube for this season coming up to put the product out there? I mean, is any broadcaster going to fork over money for rights, or is the AFL just going to put it, show it and they will come?
Well, and this is what keeps interesting. It plays exactly into that whole dichotomy of like love, hate, fear, excitement. Is the league itself, in one capacity or another, has basically rumored since the summertime that, and has stated in multiple occasions, they will have broadcast partners. Like, they are not doing YouTube. They are going to be on either streaming partners or on actual national broadcast television. Now, what national setup that is, that's up for air. The one that is the most common one that has basically been, it's near confirmed at this point, it feels like, just given how it's been talked about or slipped up on. NFL Network, it seems, is like the one place everyone knows it's going to happen.
Okay.
One of my favorite podcasts that's on right now, but that's league affiliated, is called Flock U. It's the Albany Firebirds podcast. Really great guys over there. Jeff Levesque, who's the team president, hosts it. He's a radio host out there for Fox Sports Albany, or Capital Region, whatever they call it. And they host it every week. And basically, the home opener, the first game of the year, is Orlando visiting Albany on the anniversary of the Firebirds 1999 Arena Bowl championship. Like, same opponent and everything.
Right.
It's like 25 years 25 years since they won that Arena Bowl. And the way he implied it was that, and it's been implied elsewhere like this too, is that game is going to take place after the NFL draft.
Okay.
And if you look at the day, it's April 27th. Now, the NFL draft starts on the 25th.
Right.
The broadcast schedule for the draft, the first 2 days, ESPN, ABC, they do draft coverage. And NFL Network does draft coverage. The only one I know of that does draft coverage all 3 days is NFL Network.
Right.
And the way it's been stated, Lee Hutton said it this way in his first in his appearance on the first AFL podcast episode, the way it's been talked about with like the Albany crew is the draft ends, and immediately after the draft ends, the AFL kicks off. So not to mention that the commissioner kind of slipped up in the summertime on a conversation with folks in Southwest Kansas and basically said the NFL Network is in talks with them. So the NFL Network is basically at the finish line to be it.
Okay.
Is what it
but
sounds
that's
like.
just only for, I mean, is that for all the games? I'm assuming
No,
just
no, no,
only
no.
for a
So
select couple games.
there's more
because there's just no way.
No, it's not just NFL Network. I can tell you that. The other ones they've talked about, Amazon's been a common one, like Prime, where they've talked apparently that's an option for digital. I know for a fact that this is via Humble when they've talked. Who remember Humble is the one that creates the website for them.
Right.
And also the app that they have made for the AFL, that they want to have games broadcast via the app. So you can also, once they get it set up, watch games on the AFL's app when that happens.
Right.
The way they've talked though is that at least NFL Network, possibly Amazon, recent interviews they've hinted that there might be like a third partner or a different partner elsewhere. No matter what though, they've basically said they're going on like in some way you can watch on a national scale, and in some way you can watch it from the comfort of your own home without much like barrier. So
yeah,
they haven't fully revealed it. The next threshold to do it though will come up soon.
yeah,
The broadcast deal has been pushed back like twice. Reasons being they claim it's the broadcasters themselves that are trying to advise / their PR team advise to release the schedule on a certain time frame. So they're almost like juggling the best time to do it is what they claim to do. And they have said that according to them around the Super Bowl. So Super Bowl week, it sounds like they're supposed to reveal the broadcast deal.
okay,
which we'll see then. You know,
yeah,
I think that'll be big. Now, to be fair, the broadcast deal is one thing. It's what the price will be on how they do it. Because one reason why a lot of teams do YouTube at this level is it is much more cost friendly at
right,
this level. History for the AFL has shown that the AFL has never made money off a broadcast deal that we are aware of. At least I don't think they made. I am not aware of them making money on NBC. Someone else might know that differently, but
yeah,
besides the NBC deal, they didn't make money on NFL Network the last time they were on, which is in 2010 through like I think 2012. And that'll be the question: will they make money on this? Because besides that, gate revenue generally is what the arenas do,
right,
and not every arena is currently selling tickets or season tickets because each one of these teams is on a different schedule right now, and they've basically been trying to sync it up, and it's been kind of a challenge because of the different levels they're at.
yeah. It just, to me, it sounds like, and I know, when the first part of this podcast, it was Dave, Fran, and I, we sat and we talked arena ball, and that's why I'm glad to have you on at the back half of this because, and obviously you haven't heard that first part of the show, or first part of the show yet.
I'll definitely want to tune in for that first part because
yeah. But that's why, I wanted to have you on to bring perspective to it because, you've covered, not only you've covered really all the leagues very, very close. And, I always tell people you are, if I've got a question about any of these leagues, I go to you first rather than go to Google because I know I'll get the answer. I'll get the correct answer from you. Whereas if I go to the search engine, I'm going to get 100 guesses and one of those will be right. So no, hey, this has been great because the whole arena thing, to me being over here, obviously I can watch the indoor football league because to me,
oh yeah,
football season doesn't end, and with my schedule, so for those listening here who maybe have not heard this from me before, so we've got the playoffs coming. We're recording this in Japan it's Sunday night. In America, it is Saturday.
It is now early Sunday morning.
Early Sunday morning
midnight here
in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So like for me, the Arena Football League are watching arena games and indoor football league games on TV on YouTube. It means I can start my morning off with football.
Right.
So I mean, I'm hoping that the AFL just says, hey, we're gonna, but I still have access to NFL Network and and those things are great. But going back to what we said, with streaming, just how crucial streaming I think is for these new leagues, and how really, like you said, they need to get their act together and start. Let's get a plan here, because
they really do. They really do. And I'll tell you what, there's even more that really, this grinds my gears. I don't tolerate poor social media in 2024. In this day and age, you have to have it. And I'll tell you, the teams themselves, it depends on the team.
Yeah.
A chunk of them, I would say, have all the platforms and they use all of them, but there's some that don't, like they only use Facebook, which is the default arena community. I'm going to be honest with you. Facebook is where most of the arena fans exist.
Okay.
Not as much on Twitter, not as much on Instagram. There's more on Instagram than Twitter. I'll give you that. But
well, Twitter's become a cesspool anyway, and a lot of people are banning Twitter anyway for obvious reasons.
I mean, it's changed a lot. Yeah. I mean, there's people that have left, you name it. Facebook's been the de facto arena place. So like what's happening is some of these teams that are being run that are like from the smaller scales, like I told you, they're going to the comfort food.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to be on all of the big three platforms. TikTok, okay, lenient. I get it. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But Instagram is photos.
Yeah.
Twitter is basically photos and text.
Little text.
Facebook is the same and is a combination of both. It's not that hard. But what happens is that you have these teams like, I'll give an example, Oregon, who used to post on regular on X and Insta. They haven't been doing it lately. It seems silly, but as a guy that's watched some other arena leagues struggle, I'm looking at you, NAL, by the way. Social media gets neglected a lot of times as a professional tool, and they're having struggles. Now, at the league level, it's a different weird mess.
Right.
So, Greg, you'll get a kick out of this. So they have access to their Twitter and Instagram. Back in November, they actually used their Twitter and they liked posts that were talking badly about the league for some reason. So that was dumb, whoever's running that. They also made claims of certain games happening week 1 that didn't happen. For example, they said the Chicago Rush and the Firebirds were going to play week 1 at one point. And that is an old reply, hopefully deleted at this point. They also have named their Twitter account, and credit, this is their website name, but they don't do it for every other account. They've named their Twitter account Arena Football USA, but the others are named Arena Football League. So another disconnect on the brand name. Then you go to their Facebook, and I know you want to say something, but I have to say the Facebook one before you.
Oh, no, that's okay.
They haven't posted on their Facebook page since May 22nd.
Yeah, that's bad.
And there's hints, and this was asked directly to Lee Hutton in not his most recent appearance, but in his one 3 weeks ago I talked about earlier in the show. And apparently he claims that is problems he's been running into is some folks are not complying with the certain accounts, and maybe some changeover happened and they didn't give over the keys is what it sounds like. So you can see how this is very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because if I'm sitting here and I feel like I can partially run these things out of my off time, it really is frustrating when you have the AFL brand and you can't professionally run your own social media. And most fans won't give a crap. They just want to buy the tickets, and as long as it exists and it looks good enough. But like, I care because I know that doesn't look good, and people will talk about it that way. And it means a little more when you can have it consistently across everything.
Yeah.
And and Commissioner Hutton said on shows, he keeps tabs on that stuff. He knows, he listens to fans, but like, that's going to have to come to roost soon because of the TV deal dropping soon. It would be nice to have all 3 accounts active to post the television schedule.
Right. Yeah.
You need to have everywhere.
Yeah. And in spring football, which arena football, indoor football,
it's in that category.
Because all those leagues right now are really competing against one another for eyeballs for, for attendance, for tickets and all that. So yeah,
Mhm.
you're going to have to, yeah, it's going to be an interesting next few months how this all plays out. So,
Right.
hey,
Now,
Zach,
if they get things accelerated in the next few months, this is
yeah,
where my tweener caution comes in. I have optimism if things continue to develop as they've been. Like I said, the Fanatics Live thing that was announced today as we're recording, or at least it was brought up on the website. It's a good thing. They keep hinting that they have not shown their whole deck.
right.
So I am giving them their leeway, but it's running out, is all I can tell you.
Okay.
Their next threshold is the Super Bowl, is the week of the Super Bowl for me, basically. The
Yeah, and
broadcast
that's
deal has to come out this time. You can't keep
right.
delaying it. So
And I mean, we're talking weeks, and we're talking days, weeks, days, and even hours at this point that
mhm.
something really needs to happen. So, hey, before we wrap up everything, let's talk a little NFL because we got the conference. By the time this episode comes out, obviously the conference, we'll know who's
Right.
playing in the Super Bowl. But but there is one team we can actually kind of talk about. Actually, there's two teams we can talk
There's
about
two.
without, yeah, well, we between our Bears and, our Cardinals,
Mhm.
two of the worst teams in the league this past year.
Pretty much.
Do you see any hope for either team this going into the offseason?
I mean, I can tell you as a Chicago fan, I do, but it's going to come down to really, you know, can can my head coach actually right the ship with a new staff since they fired pretty much the entire staff, sans I believe the D line coach
Right.
the O line coach, to stay with Matt Eberflus, which is basically a sign to say, as you know, hey buddy, you're on the hot seat. You got to go to the
Right.
playoffs this year. Like that is basically it.
Yeah.
That's the first step
And
towards the firing.
here's a wild card kind of thrown in there too that people really don't talk about, and I think they should. But Virginia McCaskey, she's 100, and
She's getting. I'm amazed at how she's still kicking very
she's
well.
still kicking. She has the final say.
Mm-hmm.
So if she passes away, this coming year, I would not be surprised to see the Chicago Bears organization do a complete 180 on how they approach this team. I
I
really because I could see if things aren't working out, dude, if they go 0 and 4 or 0 and 3, I think that's it because it, you know, I mean yeah, I just don't see how he could keep his job if they start failing right out of the gate, which
right.
we know it could very well happen. Now the
Well,
Cardinals, on the other hand, go ahead. We'll stick with the Bears here.
yeah,
Um,
I'll wrap up. I mean, I'll wrap up my thing because I do the Cardinals. I do want to hear yours because like I do kind of follow them
yeah.
out here, getting
Well, you
better, but
kind of got it.
still a
You
Bears
got,
fan at heart,
yeah,
first. But Virginia does have the final say. Um, I know just the way it's been written up is that George McCaskey is really like he handles more of the day to day. The serious stuff Virginia has to be in the room for.
right,
But because Virginia, her age and everything like that, George does kind of become that
right,
surrogate, if you will,
yeah,
for the time being. And he's the family member in the room with the next power involved. And basically, he'll be the one taking over the organization when she passes away. For the organization, though, I mean, I'll give him this. Kevin Warren, I think Kevin Warren is an office guy, great hire to me, and is someone that I don't think takes crap. Um, he's got his own plate of stuff to deal with the stadium he's trying to build, but he's also made it known he does not take issue with success. And they did reorganize how they do management. Ted
right,
Phillips, he was a big guy that people felt like was interfering with a lot of issues over the last 2 decades. He retired
yeah,
just 2 years ago.
right,
I know he was a financial guy, but a lot of times people felt he was a person in the room that was making decisions that were not helpful for the team. So he's like an advisor role, I believe it is, but he doesn't have any major stake in the Bears anymore. They basically gave that role to Kevin Warren and he
right,
does all of it now.
yeah.
So it's not diversified between like multiple people. It's Kevin's job, and he's a football guy. You know, Brian Poles, decent GM, but I still need to see him play out how this goes this offseason, and can he pay veterans that play well? He's proven so far he's okay with just letting people walk because there's probably a cheaper version of him in the room somewhere else.
Right.
You know, and sure, TJ Edwards worked out,
Yeah.
but Roquan Smith also is an all-pro linebacker that you could have afforded when you paid Tremaine Edmonds similar money. So just putting that out there. And then, then it comes down to the coach. But, I think there's I wanted to wrap up that there is optimism. There is a good core roster. I just don't like Matt Eberflus, and I just don't think he's the right guy for the job. But consistency, and it's the Bears way. They usually give him 3 years unless it's a complete train wreck, and he won just enough games.
Yeah,
that's how it goes in the NFL. You'd win just enough, you show progress, you get another year.
Yeah, it's funny because when John Gunning and we talk on, we try to get a little Bears talking on the Gridiron Japan podcast, and he's as hardcore. Hell, he's more hardcore than you and I with the Bears, and we're hometown guys.
Yeah.
We've built up. Somebody was saying something about Chicago fans, that they have the best sense of humor. And the reason why we do is because we've had to endure, not only the Bears, but the White Sox. And, if you grew up a Cubs fan, then you've got,
right,
the great self-deprecating humor is something,
the dark times.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't have hope, but because they didn't give Mark Trestman really a chance. They cut him loose after 2 years.
I'll admit that one. That one felt like it was at the end. And what gets me is mid-season.
Yeah,
Matt Eberflus was like, and this is Bears fans too, if I'm gauging the room, they were dead set he was going to be gone.
Right.
Saved his job when he took the defensive coordinator spot, and Luke Getsy and company altered the offense a bit to be more reactionary, pick two options for Justin Fields in the running game. Without those options and the defense being reinforced by a coordinator, figure, who's running head coach, we probably are talking about someone else going to Chicago. Maybe it's not, I was hoping dream scenario was Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
But, I get why he went to LA. And again, Matt Eberflus, it's the way of the NFL. You win 4 more games. This is a low baseline. He set for himself year one. He did, he showed a little more cohesion in the second half and saved his position. You get 1 more year. Unlike Trestman, who, as much as both of them did media gaffes in PR conferences and did weird things with how they managed games, one in his second year went from an 8-8 squad that just missed winning the division to a complete 5-11 train wreck. The other was already a train wreck and recovered from a potential second year train wreck.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. You can point to that and and this is what always kills me, Greg. It's just enough of an excuse to do nothing. Complacency with the Bears, it goes hand in hand every single time.
Yeah.
And I've only lived 28 years on this earth, and it happens at such a regular rate in my life. They are complacent until they have to change something.
Well, and that's, going back to the late 70s when George Halas brought Mike Ditka in, because it was like that back then. And then they brought Ditka in. And to me, when they brought Ditka, was not a freaking football genius at all, but he coached under Tom Landry, and, they had, Jim Finks was doing the draft. So they had, the perfect mediocre coach for the abundance of talent that they had. And they also had Buddy Ryan. So, but we don't have that. So I don't know where we go with the Bears. I guess just hope, again, hope is not a plan, but that's all we got.
You can do in the NFL. It's not like we're worrying about survivability of a team. Right. It's just, do you get the jigsaw puzzle put together right this time? That's all it is, And then
for our Cardinals, to me, the team really fumbled the ball for the season when they introduced the new uniforms. And from there,
I
it
hated
was
their
just a train
uniforms
wreck.
so much. I hate those things
It
so much.
was, and again, we're going back to football fashion and everything. But when they brought that red jersey out, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You had me with the white, you had me with the black, and then you bring this monstrosity out. And
I
I'm
am I am not a fan of jerseys that just plaster the name of the team smack on the chest. It's to me one of the most corny things you can do with a football jersey. Let the design speak for itself.
right. I mean,
Like
unless you're in high
anytime, like
school, the
it's
only
like the
time,
Browns when they slap Browns on the front. I'm like,
yeah,
that's the most
or
goober-esque looking jersey you could have made.
right. Yeah, I mean, unless you're a high school team and I mean, the only place where that looks good is on a high school football jersey. But
Yes.
even then, I don't know. But that's where, to me, where the ball got dropped. And, the Cardinals never failed to disappoint. And when they traded Joshua Dobbs and sent him packing, again, they had Kyler Murray, which,
He's still a minute. He's still a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
to
it's just
go.
it's frustrating. And but then again, these are two Chicago teams, and for those who don't know, the Arizona Cardinals roots, I mean, they were a South Side team, played at Comiskey Park, hell, played at Soldier Field too. So they're a
Yeah.
South Side team, and it's the Chicago curse, I guess, man. So
Now,
we're
now
just with
you can correct my history on this a little, but I was doing a little reading upsies, if you will, on kind of the Cardinals' move to St. Louis back in the day. And unless I misread something, my understanding is that, the NFL didn't want him to go to St. Louis originally, but were forcing their hand, but basically got their hand forced when Lamar Hunt started talking about building the AFL in St. Louis. And they
well,
basically opened the gate to letting the Cardinals go once they heard that there might be competition in that market.
yeah, it's interesting. First of all, have you ever read Joe Zimbo's book on the Cardinals? He is the
I have not read that book.
So he has two books he has written. And Joe's a great friend of mine. He's been on the show. Um, Joe Zimbo wrote the book. Joe Zim, I can never pronounce his. I mean, Joe, I know you're probably listening. Please forgive me. Um, but anyway, the first book he wrote about the Cardinals was called When Football Was Football. It's one of those books that is so old, you've got to order it from the library. It's no longer in print. The
Okay.
only print copy that I know that's available is sitting at Randy Snow's house, who does the World of Football podcast. Because
Mm-hmm.
I let him, when I moved, I gave him my copy that Joe signed. I gave it to him to read. So that's the only copy, and you can't. But you have to go to. But believe it. Well, you're down in Arizona too, so
I got a library card, so I mean,
no, no, no. What I'm saying is he does lectures during the year when he's retired. So he comes down to Arizona.
oh,
So
does he now?
and now is that time of year where he's kicking up with his lectures at the library. He's done
Hmm.
at Mesa Library. He travels around the state, does lectures about the Cardinals and the history of the team. So he's got that book, and then also too recently, he just put out within the last year and a half, um, his book on the Bears and the Cardinals,
Okay.
and that'll have that those books will answer the question. But in a nutshell, why the Cardinals moved to St. Louis, it was just a combination of factors. It was the AFL, it was the fact that with two football teams in town and the way the blackout rules were back then, Chicago football fans couldn't see any of their teams on TV.
Yeah.
And so that and it was just a lot of things. Plus, too, the Cardinals were losing money too. I mean, they were losing money, but they were always teetering right on the edge. And the Bidwells have been horrible owners for decades, and it continues to this day. I don't care what anybody says about Michael Bidwell. Um, the reputation of the franchise has taken a huge hit with him at the helm. From what has been alleged, from the product on the field
Yep.
to the uniforms, and the uniform that's a sidebar. But even I mean, help. I mean, there's the Cardinals, when they first moved out, and I, if you remember this, when the Cardinals first moved to Phoenix, it was with the promise that they were going to get a dome stadium, and it took 20 years to get them. Let's see, 87, yeah. So it took 20 years to get the stadium, and so when they played at Sun Devil Stadium, I mean, dude, you know how hot it gets down there during the day. That's all I'm saying. Just so they couldn't get people in the stadium unless either the Cowboys were in town or it was a night game, one of those types of deals. So they get the new stadium, they start bringing, and the fans start coming. But I mean, you think about where the Cardinals have, they never put a quality product on the field. Bad man, and Steve Keim. Don't even get me started.
Well,
with Steve
I mean, that's its own can of worms too from that era, which is ironic because, like, in recent memory, the Steve Keim era, if you talk like, Carson Palmer and like post Kurt Warner,
oh yeah,
it's the most successful like second phase in the 21st century.
Right.
Like they were one blowout loss away from going to a Super Bowl with Carson Palmer and company. It's still kind of crazy to think that they were, if they just had their A game for one night in Carolina, they could have changed how that was going on.
They've had quality coaches down there. I mean, Ken Wisenhunt to me is still, everybody talks about Bruce Arians, but Bruce Arians didn't make it to the show with the team he had. They should have gone to a Super Bowl, but Ken Wisenhunt was able to get a 9-7 team, and it really managed that team well, because if you remember those playoffs for that Super Bowl that year, the Cardinals looked nothing like they looked at the end of the season. When they started that playoff run, they were fresh. It's one of those where they peaked right at that time. Even their record was crappy, but everybody was healthy. Edgerrin James hadn't really played all year, so he had fresh legs, and it was a magical season. But other than that season when they went to the Super Bowl and that 2015 team in that Bruce Arians run where they had potential, but it's just been nothing but disappointment. So I'm curious to see where we go from here.
Yeah, I do wonder what happens. I mean, obviously the Kyler decision is a big deal, or at least how they're going to keep going with him. It sounds like they're going to stick with him for the most part. So, and he showed flashes at the end of the year that he's healthy. It's just, I feel like more of his problems now are actually about his health than his own production, because he's shown he's electric. He can throw his size and he can run, but he has not shown much dexterity.
Right.
And it's starting to catch up to him.
Yeah. I mean, he's great for, I mean, if you're drafting a fantasy team, you want him, but if you want your team to win, is he really the guy that you really want in the in the short term and even in the long term?
Can you expect him to be the runner again like he was in his early years? I don't think so. No. I think he has to become, and credit, he can throw from the pocket. We've seen it. But I feel like the runability of Kyler Murray is not going to be as what it used to be, because I mean, we're talking dude that's dealt with ankle injuries, ACL, and it's been a consistent injury plague since he's gotten into the league. Yeah. So you have that usually that usually then is where you're converting yourself. Like it's like Cam Newton,
right.
All right. Gotta be a pocket passer. If you start running again, you can, but A, you're not going to be as effective because you've had to deal with recovery. B, you're going to have that in your head.
Right.
That I might have something get messed up if I run too much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting too, just thinking about that. Not everybody has tried to be Fran Tarkenton over the years, but nobody can. So
it's hard to be.
Yeah. Really, so, hey, buddy, listen, on that note, let's wrap everything up here. So before we hit the stop button on the podcast, let everybody know how to find you, reach you, watch, you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're all good. Yeah, my best advice is really search anything that's UFL podcast. That's the main thing I would go for. So you can find us at UFL podcast on your favorite social media platform, or look up UFL podcast on YouTube. We're actually expanding our roster of shows. Like I said at the beginning, it's been a long interview, so I'll reiterate this. or not even interview, just conversation. So conversation between buddies. What am I doing? I'm like for some reason in a show I've never been on before mode, which is silly because I've talked to you so many times.
Yeah.
Anyhow, UFL podcast on your favorite social media platform. On YouTube, check out UFL podcast, the page. We are doing, starting now till the end of the UFL season and beyond, most likely every Monday, we have Around the UFL. It's your favorite pro football newsroom writers, personalities. They're coming together on one show, talking 1 hour about the UFL, the last week of the UFL, recaps of the games, interviews with players, coaches, personalities from the league that we're going to have on a regular basis. So check that out. And then the UFL podcast is on every Friday, or at least Fridays during the season, 9 a.m. Eastern time on that same page. Gets you ready for the week ahead and any news from the week before. So we cover you with the recaps. We got you for the previews. We have everything this year on PFN.
And you guys are going to be busy. You guys are going to be real busy.
This is the busiest we have been. But I'll tell you, everyone that's in our group, we're ready for it. We're excited for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to tuning in too. And I know I'm going to be listening more to you guys as the year progresses. So, and if everybody out there with our little podcast, hey, we now have a Facebook page. So we are.
All right.
Yeah. We're at www. I sound real old now saying www. But anyway, facebook.com / from the 55. We're also on Twitter, X, or whatever the hell you're going to call it. From the 55. Dave, Fran, and I are old guys, so we're not doing Instagram right now. But also, hey, we're at the Sports History Network and Sports History HQ with Arnie, and not only are we there, but man, there's a ton of great podcasts out there focusing on history, including Joe Zimba's When Football Was Football podcast. He is the dean of the history professors at the Sports History Network. So, nice. On that note, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will be talking to you next week. Bye-bye.
This is Hugh McElhenney of the San Francisco 49ers. Here is our football polka.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.